Good evening and welcome to the Chanel Show. Parliament Week always gets crazy and we're accustomed to seeing heated exchanges between government and opposition. Add an election year and you can sure as hell bet the crazy is going to go up a notch. A particularly interesting debate broke out on the floor of the House this week, with Honorable Selai Andi Maitonga calling out Fiji Times and Fiji Village for their biased and poorly researched coverage of opposition politicians.
We worked hand in hand to serve the people in this time of need. What were opposition politicians doing during this time? Mr. Speaker, sir, rubbing their hands with happiness and cheering for COVID-19 failure? Mr. Speaker, sir, they thought that this was their opportunity, together with the Fiji Times and Fiji Village, to attack the government. They did not care. Listen, they did not care that people were suffering and they could have done their part in assisting. No, they put themselves ahead of suffering people, ahead of the nation, spreading all kinds of lies.
A very upset Honorable Biman Prasad fired back in his statement and labeled Fiji Times and Fiji Village as the two most independent media organizations in Fiji.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday we had the Honorable Assistant Minister for UK Affairs continue from our end of week statement of 24th September in Parliament to attack probably the two most independent media organizations, namely the Fiji Times and Communications Fiji Limited, and Fiji Village, of giving too much coverage to the opposition and therefore spreading lies.
Now, I don't know who Honorable Prasad thinks is kidding, but the partisan hacks at Fiji Times are so far opposition-leaning, they might as well officially declare themselves the official media wing for opposition parties. Fiji Times doesn't even bother to hide their bias anymore, and people from all parts of the political spectrum widely acknowledge that Fiji Times is there to attack government at all cost. Fiji Times loosely covered Honorable Selai Andi Maitonga's speech, omitting key parts of it. It is obvious that Ms. Andi Maitonga does not know much about the role of the media. The Fiji Times does not exist to create positive headlines for government. It exists to publish all views and to ensure there is balanced coverage of the news and balanced political debate. I will leave it at that, said Fiji Times editor Fred Wesley. Oh, really? Fiji Times exists to ensure balanced coverage and balanced political debate? Turns out, Fiji Times actually believes that they are playing the role of a balanced media organization. What a joke. What's most hilarious about this? The very same article where Fred Wesley claimed that Fiji Times is there to ensure balanced coverage of news, the very same article, they sneakily omitted the main point of the MP's speech, which is International Idea calling Fiji Times out. Here is what she said.
In fact, Mr. Speaker, sir, just last week, International IDEA, which is the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, called out Fiji Times on lies they were spreading about a report. The Fiji Times lied and said that the military involvement in the COVID-19 pandemic was making our democracy fragile. International IDEA corrected their lie and said they had not observed any concerns in the military's involvement in the pandemic response as they acted under the leadership of the Ministry of Health. This is publicly available and you can read it, Mr. Speaker, sir. Just like with all the other lies that Zodelpa, LFP, other politicians like Ramuka and Narumbe spread through the Fiji Times, and they did not think the country only about themselves and their political survival.
International IDEA, which is the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, just days ago called the Fiji Times out for a false article. They falsely claimed International IDEA said that military involvement in the COVID-19 response was making Fiji's democracy fragile. You're looking at the article on your screen right now. The International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance says it has not observed any concerns about military involvement in the COVID-19 pandemic that has caused democratic fragility in Fiji. The organization said the Fiji Times had wrongly reported it, saying that the military's role in the pandemic had contributed to Fiji's democratic fragility. We have not observed any concern in the military's involvement in the pandemic response as they acted under the leadership of the Ministry of Health, stated a release from IDEA.
Fiji Times were caught out for false reporting. They did not report truthfully. Did they consider that maybe, just maybe, military officers are also human beings and that they're sacrificing so much to help Fijians? Apparently not. Things like that don't matter as long as they're attacking government. There is no question about it. You've seen it with your own eyes. They did not report the truth.
Perhaps it's because it suited their partisan agenda. And they thought they could get away with it, as they have many times before. They then had the audacity to omit what Selai Andi Maitonga was talking about from their article, and then say that she has no idea what the role of the media is. Can you believe that? That is underhanded from Fred Wesley, whose ego is clearly out of control.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I just wanted to very quickly highlight one last point. The attack on Honorable Selai by the Fiji Times, Mr. Speaker, sir, when she called out the Fiji Times. What really demonstrated, and Fiji Times came on the defensive. They said, oh, we are independent, we don't do, etc. The main point that they failed to mention in their response, which Honorable Selai highlighted, she highlighted how Fiji Times deliberately said that the military was the cause of the issue on the vaccination, because of the military. And they said IDEA said that. And IDEA actually came back and corrected them. Yes. And Honorable Selai, when she highlighted that, when Fiji Times responded to her, they did not quote that at all. This is the kind of obfuscation that's going on, Mr. Speaker, sir.
This happens time and time again. And you're not allowed to criticize these people. No, no, no. They're benevolent. They're the media. They hide behind a wall of virtue signaling every time their corruption is called out. How dare you attack us? Are you North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un? They all repeat in unison. I don't care what side you're on when it comes to politics. When any media lies this blatantly, then insults people using unscrupulous tricks like this, after, by the way, being incompetent themselves, it is an insult to your intelligence. They think you're stupid, and they can say whatever they want and you'll believe them. You'll do exactly what they say and vote for opposition, because that's the point. Well, sadly for them, Fijians are not stupid, and their corrupt antics are becoming easier and easier to spot. So no, Honorable Prasad, the Fiji Times is not an independent media as you claim, but nice try. After the break, Fiji Village. Welcome back. It's pretty obvious to everyone but the most ignorant that Fiji Times is a biased media organization. Fiji Village is another organization that has come under fire for the way they have been reporting some issues. So how did Communications Fiji Limited react to being called opposition mouthpieces by Honorable Selai? Well, they immediately put out an article refuting those claims.
But in this article, they failed to mention International IDEA's media release, which talked about the false information published in Fiji Times. This was the MP's whole point. Her whole point was based off this release. About a week ago, Fiji Village had covered International IDEA's media release, so they knew about it. They should have talked about this. They chose instead to use other voice clips. These voice clips weakened the Honorable MP's argument. Was this deliberate?
Does that sound like fair, balanced, and accurate reporting to you? We are not in the business of personalizing and politicizing issues, said the article written by Vijay Narayan and Navitalai Naivalarua. We always stand for balance, fairness, and accuracy. Now, this is where things get even weirder. The article says this. She also claimed that the Fiji Times lied about the military involvement during the COVID-19 pandemic, which made democracy in Fiji fragile.
It wasn't a claim by Honorable Andi Maitonga. It wasn't a claim, it was an article that had been written in the Fiji Times itself. She was talking about it. Again, by using these key words, they were weakening the Honorable MP's argument. The wording used made this article quite misleading.
As you have seen with your own eyes in the previous segment, by the way, it was International Idea who corrected false information being spread by Fiji Times in an article that was written in the Fiji Times. We'll play it again for you, just so you see it again with your own eyes.
In fact, Mr. Speaker, sir, just last week, International ID, which is the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, called out Fiji Times on lies they were spreading about a report. The Fiji Times lied and said that the military involvement in the COVID-19 pandemic was making our democracy fragile. International Idea corrected their lie and said they had not observed any concerns in the military's involvement in the pandemic response as they acted under the leadership of the Ministry of Health.
So ask yourself, why did they spin it and completely get it wrong? Does this sound like fair, balanced, and accurate reporting to you? By the way, this article was co-written by Vijay Narayan and Navitalai Naivalarua. So this is not some new journalist straight out of school. This is the editor and probably the most senior journalist that CFL has. But wait, it gets even stranger, believe it or not. Fiji Village then shared the same article again for the second time from their website to their Facebook page, this time captioning it, CFL stations, Legend FM, FM 96, VTF FM, Naftarang, and Radio Sargam, and website, Fiji Village, have never spread lies on the vaccines. In fact, we have supported the vaccination campaign even before it started with awareness campaigns, talkbacks, and special shows to assist the health ministry. They're really getting defensive and having a go at Honorable Selai. Strange for a fair and independent media organization as they claim to be. This is not the behavior of a fair media organization, by the way. Vilifying critics is not what the media is supposed to do. You're going to get criticized. But this is and always has been the biggest problem with our media. They operate how they want and vilify anyone who calls out their mistakes. Anyone who tells you that the media is not free in Fiji is talking absolute crap. The media freely attacks whoever they want on a daily basis. Don't believe me. Don't believe the partisan politicians and media and NGOs who all cry that the media is censored in Fiji. Pick up a copy of the Fiji Times. See it with your own eyes. They attack, often unfairly and without balance. If the media was censored, would they be allowed to do this? This is their defense, their excuse to act however they want. Tell whatever lie, distort whatever stories, and get away with it by crying media freedom whenever someone calls them out on it. After the break, we'll look at some key statements from Parliament. Welcome back. We now look at highlights of some important statements in Parliament so far. Prime Minister Frank Bainimarama had an important message for Fijians going into election year.
Mr. Speaker, His Excellency expressed strong sentiments and hard truths in his address at the opening session of the Parliament. If you are like me, you are at the same time encouraged, inspired, and admonished by His Excellency's remarks. He held up the strengthening of our democracy as his single most important responsibility. He rightly told the Fijian people that our democracy belongs to them, not only to us parliamentarians sitting here today, not only to the candidates who will stand for the next national elections, not only to the political parties or the commentators or the privileged, but to all the people. The people have great power to tell us what they want, to express their satisfaction or dissatisfaction, and to give direction to the people they elect. And democracy is more than elections. In a democracy, we protect the rights of all citizens. So we stand uplifted by His Excellency's words, but also admonished because he gave us a warning. Mr. Speaker, he warned us that our own actions in exercising two of the most basic and defining functions of democracy can actually undermine it. He was, of course, talking about elections and legislative debate. He warned us of the politics of pettiness, of the dangers of identifying so narrowly with one group. For example, on the basis of ethnicity or religion, that we undermine our identification with a nation or nation state. And he asked us to be civil and honest as we conduct our electoral campaigns. Mr. Speaker, in the coming year, we will be vying for government, with every political party competing for every Fijian's vote. Elections often bring about criticism and attacks. I believe all of us have been guilty at one time or another of going too far, of saying things we should not have said or could have said better. His Excellency has asked us to stop, and we should heed him. We can criticize each other's positions without misrepresenting them, without personalizing matters, attacking the family and friends of our opponents, or worse, using ordinary Fijians as pawns for political ascendancy. We can criticize each other on the facts and stay within the bounds of decency. We can point out our differences without demonizing each other. Isn't it better, Mr. Speaker, that we adhere to decency, to the truth, and to a genuine battle of ideas, rather than sink to the depths of discourse to win votes at any cost? The people deserve better. They deserve facts, Mr. Speaker, real policies backed by real budgets, so that they can make informed decisions on who is best to lead them. This is what they will continue to get from my government, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my government has worked hard to confront the major issues and solve the major problems this country faces. We have an impressive record of reform, and we have focused on bringing stability to the country and consistency to government's policies. Everyone knows where we stand because we have stated it clearly. The economic reforms, the legal reforms, the administrative reforms, the social reforms, the financial and commercial reforms, the education reforms speak for themselves. So does our commitment to uplift the most disadvantaged Fijians and reduce the disparities between rural and urban communities. And we have also confronted and dealt with crises, including terrifying cyclones and, of course, the global pandemic.
Minister for Education, Pramila Kumar, said it was unfortunate that opposition would always remain critical for the single purpose of winning an election. Check it out.
Unfortunately, the opposition will remain critical, foremost for a single reason, and that is how they can sway the minds of people through misinformation and lies just to win the next election. Mr. Speaker, sir, the President very eloquently said that he will protect the flame of our young democracy from all who seek to extinguish it for personal and political purposes. Mr. Speaker, sir, this says it all about what some people are trying to do. Instead of uniting the nation, they're playing in the age-old game of divide and rule. It is the Fiji First government that has given all Fijians equality, stability, and dignity so that we can live peacefully. It is my hope that those who attempt to divide do not succeed. Mr. Speaker, sir, the government's COVID strategy, including the decisive plan for vaccine rollout, has worked. We are very pleased that the infection rates have gone down substantially. Businesses are open and jobs are being restored. And most importantly, we have aeroplanes to fly when the international border opens tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, sir, if the opposition had its way, we will be looking for aeroplanes to fly, as they would have returned the planes not knowing how the leasing arrangements in the aviation industry works. This would have meant thousands of tourists we expect over the next few months choosing another airline, resulting in revenue meant for Fiji going to other countries.
Minister for Employment, Youth and Sports Praveen Bala had this to say.
We cannot have people with little ideas and little minds focus on little issues of little relevance to the nation, pretending to be leaders be given the time of the day. They are the sideshows of the day, Mr. Speaker, say in this House, and we do not need. And they will remain sideshows, Mr. Speaker, say, as we move forward towards a strong nation that is built on unity towards progress for all Fijians. Mr. Speaker said this key message from His Excellency the President was expressed clearly in the true spirit of an appeal in the national interest beyond the narrow vision of communal politics.
And finally, Minister for Defense, Inia Seri Ratu, had this message about the politics of old.
It is most unfortunate that some members of this August Parliament continued with their usual rhetoric to criticize and oppose for the sake of opposing, because they are opposition members, rather than taking time to listen, digest and analyze the general theme of His Excellency's address. Those who are quick to speak against His Excellency's address without caring to listen and be guided by the wisdom therein, unfortunately miss out on the lesson and direction it intended to convey. Madam Speaker, please allow me to refer to a few key statements made by His Excellency, which I personally believe will be helpful to every honourable member and likewise to every Fijian for now and in the years to come. His Excellency the President clearly outlined in his opening remarks and reminded us to guard closely the democracy created under our Fijian Constitution. He went on to state that although young, he had been in leadership long enough to see the difference between the genuine democracy we share today and past systems that fell short of delivering true equality for our people. I say that again. He had been in leadership long enough to see the difference between the genuine democracy we share today and past systems that fell short of delivering true equality for our people. What does that statement mean, Madam Speaker? To me, His Excellency is reminding us that previously we were a democracy but struggling with the crisis of inequality. I say that again. We were a democracy, but we were struggling with the crisis of inequality. And sorry to say, Madam Speaker, while this inequality issue was glaringly obvious and denied us progress, it suits the politics of old cared not to remove it at all. Why? Because it suits their purpose and political ideology. Ethnic politics occupied center stage, often prompting violent conflict and political changes, but unfortunately, these political changes were for their own benefit without addressing the core issue. I've always referred to the cobweb and the spider. Madam Speaker, we were just dusting off the cobwebs, but to get rid of the cobwebs, we need to kill the spider. That was what previous governments were supposed to do, Madam Speaker. To fix that, Madam Speaker, Fiji needs to undergo a fundamental transformation. That is our history, and that is why, Madam Speaker, His Excellency is reminding us that he sees the preservation and the strengthening of our democratic society as his greatest responsibility as our President. What a powerful statement indeed. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, His Excellency has vowed to protect the flame of our young democracy from any and all who seek to extinguish it for personal or political purposes. This statement perhaps was not well received too from the opposition side, Madam Speaker, but His Excellency knows too well that as we are moving closer to elections, politicians and political parties still tethered to the past will exploit the opportunity to do so for their short-term political will and win. May I again quote the words of George Bernard Shaw: "Progress is impossible without change. People who cannot change their mind cannot change anything." Madam Speaker, let me go back to the statement that I have made earlier that Fiji needed a fundamental transformation because we were a democracy suffering from inequality crisis. This transformation came about as a result of the nationwide community consultation undertaken by the National Council for Building a Better Fiji through the State of the Nation and Economy Report and the People's Charter for Change, Peace and Progress under the then Bainimarama government. Again, based on our history, Madam Speaker, the People's Charter for Change, Peace and Progress reviewed our system of government, constitution, laws, economic resources development, leadership values, policies, and so forth. Fast forward, Madam Speaker, the 2013 Constitution and the 2014 general elections was the beginning of this new era for Fiji, embracing the concept of a common and equal citizenry because, again, according to His Excellency's address, our nation is home to a people who want stability and prosperity and who are wiser and more educated than ever before. This is not the 1900s. We are a great country, but held back by the politics of old. And His Excellency, in his gracious speech, is calling on us to continue to build our institutions and the ethos of equality and a strong nation state. Madam Speaker, as clearly outlined by His Excellency, the style of old politics has no place in the new Fiji. That is what the Fiji First government stands for, under the strong and visionary leadership of Prime Minister Bainimarama.
That's all we have time for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Join us next week for a special Parliament Review episode. Good evening and take care.